All right, we are live. We're going to be analyzing another deal in the Wake County area. And the reason I picked Wake County area is because yesterday we published on our community website the fair market rents for the Raleigh and Wake County area for the fair market rents. Just as a quick reminder for folks, if you remember correctly, what we saw is that they take the fair market rent and then they subtract the expected utility allowances to get to the contract rent. So these are the rents that we will be underwriting at by bedroom count in this county area. Now, just for a heads up, we need to be well aware of the rent reasonableness test, which is kind of stated right here on the far right of this PDF, where you can see that HUD requires the housing authority to determine whether the rent amount is reasonable. Rent reasonableness comparison is completed by comparing unit to unassisted units in the private market based on size, age of unit, amenities. So that's going to be important for you to remember as you are determining your rent to see, hey, what is going on in the market to see whether or not your rent is reasonable. Now, today we're looking at some areas. I just looking at multifamily because we're helping Chan the other day look at house hacking opportunities. So let's keep on going. I picked this property, $630,000. My gut says that this is too high already, but hey, what if you're house hacking, right? Think about it that way. So this property is valued at $630,000, not valued, but listed at $630,000. Looks like it's in really good condition for one of the units. So I assume that there's one unit that you will unlikely have to renovate much. It looks like that's the photos of the other unit is also included because there's furniture in here. Just a little bit of carpeting for like two rooms. That's pretty much it. Not much renovations that needs to happen here. So for this property, $630,000. All right, let's do a quick street view for this property. Looks okay. It's not like a main road, so you can definitely park on the street. That looks like it's allowed. So plenty of parking for this multifamily. Okay. All right. Next up, I want to check on the school ratings. 4, 8, and a 7. That's pretty good, actually. That's a pretty good school rating. Let's look at the crime score. So when we plug in the address here on the tophap.com, tophap.com, you can go to the neighborhood section. Boom. And you have the crime score. This is 57. National average is 100. So this is a relatively pretty safe neighborhood. So it's a really good neighborhood. So nothing's wrong with that. All right. The next thing we want to do is get the HUD FMR. I always do this, right? Because that's part of our process. But in this scenario, since I already shared with you what the contract rents are, that's the rent you should be using for the underwriting for this property. This property is in 27613, 27613. You can see it right here. The FMR for a two-bedroom is 1760. How does that compare to what here? 1760, this is 1811. So the county actually has a higher fair market rent. Why? I'm not really sure. Maybe they calculate it slightly differently, but in this scenario, it's actually favorable to us because this is higher than the HUD FMR. So sometimes housing authorities might make adjustments to whatever the FMR is and then make it their own fair market rent based on their understanding of their own market, their own neighborhoods, so that they can adjust up and down based on the standard of living or cost of living, whatever you want to call it. All right. So the next step here is we want to get the market rents. When we go to affordablehousing.com, we go to the market rent estimator, and then we plug in the address, plug in the bedroom count. You're going to see that the market rent is going to pop up. The most important number here is this number on the far right, 1411. Why is that important? Because remember, we just talked about the rent reasonableness test, right? The rent reasonableness test means that you can't charge more for rent than what you're typically seeing in unassisted units within the market. So you can't charge more to folks simply because they're about a housing choice voucher holder. So this is 0.38 miles for 11 units. Okay. Now, how does this 1411, oops, where is that file? How does this 1411 compare to the payment standard? So we're going to compare the 1411 to the 1479, which is really close, which is great. So because it's only like a $60, $70 difference, I'm pretty confident that I can charge for full amount of rent for 1479. So I'm gonna have 1479, and because there's two units, I'm gonna multiply it by two, and that's how I get to 2958. All right. The FMR that we just saw was 1711, if I remember correctly, right? 1760, excuse me. 1760 for the FMR. But the most important number is this 1479 because if you remember correctly, this 1811 number for the fair market rent that's published on the Housing Authority's website includes utilities. Here, we're not including utilities for our rental assumption, so we're going to leave that as 1479. All right. So right now, we're going to assume that you can buy this property for 25% down at 8% interest rate. What's our property tax number? So I'm just going to pull it right from Redfin. I'm going on a limb that they calculate correctly, but if not, I can always verify it, right? Just remember, the whole point of this process is to see whether or not it's worth our time to analyze the deal further. 247 is insurance, so I'm going to multiply that by 1.2 because typically it assumes that you're living in one of the units. So I'm going to multiply it by 1.2. So if I put 25% down for the $630,000 property, I'd be putting 157.5K, which means that I'm financing 472,000, and I'm assuming it's an 8% interest rate right now. Okay. And this results after you put in expenses of maintenance. So I'm gonna set aside 10% of my rent every single month for maintenance because eventually something breaks, like the roof, the HVAC, etc. I got 10% for my property management, and I got 5% set aside for my vacancy because I know that eventually someone will always move out of the property. Okay. So at 2958 right now, I would be losing, quote unquote, losing 1827.94 if I just bought it as a straight rental property using like a DSCR loan. $630,000. Whoops, sorry, I forgot to put in the rehab numbers. So let's go through the rehab really quick. This property, I always set aside money to paint the place because one of the units looked completely renovated. I'm only going to assume only the other unit needs painting. So I got 1,500 bucks for the roof, 500 bucks to keep the landscaping clean while we keep it updated. And the square footage 2457. So I'm going to equals 2457 divided by 2 at $3 a square foot to paint the place. I saw that there were 2 rooms that needed carpet to be removed to turn it into luxury vinyl plank, LVP. So I'm assuming each room is 10 by 15. So that's 150 square feet. So you multiply by 2, that's 300 square feet at $8 a square foot. Again, just using very, very rough estimates for this property. I got replacing at least, looks like there's 5 bathrooms, so, right? Yeah, I replace at least 6 toilets that need to be removed for the high pressure flush ones. And that results in a 13 grand in rehab roughly. So that results in a roughly negative 12% cash and cash return. That's assuming my rehab was $13,000 on a $630,000 property, which isn't bad. However, the problem is that you would be losing money, quote unquote, losing money, right? Now, the other option thing about it is yesterday we talked briefly about, well, what if I am house hacking? And when I looked at this property, I said, well, how do I turn it into a property where I can live on it? Well, what if, and there's a big what if this little garage or shed or whatever that may be, I like that has electrical right behind it already. What if I turn this into a one-person studio or something like that I live in? It might be really small, right? It might not be comfortable. But what if you do live in it? Well, it takes me, let's say, at least 30 grand to convert this garage, 20 to 30 grand. Let me add 30 grand to it, right? But add $30,000 to the renovation. I think that's pretty high, to be honest with you, but let's be a little conservative. But now I can live on there. I might qualify now for sure, I write down this. Yeah, it was 8%. I might qualify to use a 5% loan product now. And my interest rate might be closer to 6.5 right now. This obviously means that I have less money out of pocket for my down payment because I went from a 5% to 25%, right? I went from 157,000 to 30,000. So I'm saving $120,000 in terms of down payment and $120,000 savings. I've essentially said, hey, I'm going to put in 30 grand of that savings, quote unquote, back into my renovations, convert that extra unit right here, maybe it's a garage, a detached garage. I'm convert that into a bedroom. That allows me to put 5% down with a 42, 43 grand in rehab, but I'd be losing, quote unquote, losing $2,000 a month, 2,045. Now, is this a good idea? I don't know. I don't really know this market in terms of how much it has appreciated. There are other folks that will buy properties in certain areas because they believe, and they believe, right? They're speculating, to be super clear about that. They're speculating that the property value will go up a lot, a lot. That might be true, but it's certainly speculative. It's certainly a bet. And now this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments from anybody, but this is simply me talking out loud how I think about these projects. And you might think about like, well, if I can get a home and I'm going to be paying $2,000 of rent anyways, why not pay $2,000 back to myself? Right? Because this $2,000 loss could be less if I stay on top of maintenance and I don't end up spending the full $300 each month on maintenance and reserves. I don't end up spending the whole $300 if I self manage it. I don't typically recommend people to underwrite without property management because I think we all got into real estate for financial freedom and freedom of time. So that might not be a very smart decision to do that, but it's personally your choice. I don't know what depreciation looks like in this market. I know that you're in a decent school area, and I know that you're in a low crime area. So that's pretty good. You're right in Northwest Raleigh. And I understand that the Research Triangle is very popular. Lots of jobs, lots of data centers going out there, a lot of biotech industry. So I'm not sure if this is the right deal for you if you're house hacking. But for me as an investor, it's not a deal because I'd be losing money. But if you have a different exit strategy and you have a different ability to get better financing than an investor, then this is where you look for those opportunities where you're not necessarily competing with an investor. Like if you had to live here because you need to be closer to a job and you had to be paying $2,000 in rent anyways, well, that's your choice. It's not my choice. It's purely your choice. All right. So that's it for today. We analyzed a duplex out in Northwest Raleigh. And just to kind of recap what we did, right? First, we looked at the property, looked at the condition of the property, then we looked at the street view of the property. Then we got our rents. This was public right on the Raleigh Housing Authority's website where we saw the fair market rent and a contract rent. For this housing authority specifically, we had to get the contract rent to underwrite because it clearly states that the contract rent requested by owner equals the fair market rent minus an estimated utility allowance. So unless you are covering utilities for your tenant, which you can, it's your choice. You have to pretty much go get a estimated utility usage by trash. That might be the easiest one for you to figure out. But electricity, water, those are always a little dicey because you never know if you're incentivizing the tenant to not tell you about a leak. Because if they're not responsible for the water fee, they might not be as motivated to tell you about a leak in the house. So something for you to think about, something for you to really consider. But we looked at the crime score. That looked great. We got the market rents. We saw how comparable the market rent was to what the contract rent that we saw here. So we were comfortable using the contract rent here because it was only about a $68 difference, which isn't much at all. And especially if you're renovating your property and you also have almost 2.5 baths per unit, I'm very confident that you can charge a little bit above rent because of your number of bathrooms. But hey, give a call to the housing authority and always double check because you never know if they value it. For example, here in Southern California, they do not value whether or not your house already comes with solar, which doesn't make sense, right? You think about it, because with solar, you're saving someone 300, 500, sometimes even 700 bucks a month on electricity, especially during the summer when people are using air conditioning. So something for you to consider. Then we came in here, we updated all our numbers. We played around a few scenarios, got the asking price, we got the renovations in there, we got the rent. We plugged in our property taxes and insurance right from the Redfin website. We played around with down payment scenarios. We played around with the interest rate on the finance amount. And then that's how we came to multiple scenarios of what we're doing. Just remember that if you're living there as a prime resident, you are qualified to, well, you have to get qualified first, but you can get qualified for one of those lower down payment products that applies to multifamily now, where you can put as low as 5% now for a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex. That's one extra option that you have if you are the person to live in the home and qualify for those products based on your income and the rental income. So that's it. Hey, hopefully this was helpful for everybody. I know this is the new Lunar New Year for a lot of folks. So happy New Year's to all of you that I did not get to speak to. May this be the best year yet for you in health and wealth and love. I hope you guys are able to stay consistent with me. Please analyze the deals with me every single day. That's all it takes. 18 minutes is all it takes. If you do it for 365 days in a row, you're going to be better at analyzing deals than 95% of America. And better yet, what I'm telling you to do is sometimes folks have a lot of problems thinking about how to get started. Well, here's one way you can get started. Just copy what I'm doing, analyze the same property I did today using the same spreadsheet, and DM me your email on Instagram at InvestWithKentHe, and I'll have my team send you a copy of the spreadsheet. I've been very fortunate. I've been given the spreadsheet by other folks. I just kind of modified it and updated it to essentially fit my way of underwriting and some of the markets that I've analyzed before. So copy my homework, put it on your own YouTube channel. So when a partner comes to you in the future and says, hey, why do you think this is a deal? Well, you can go tell them that you think this is a deal because of the past 100 or 365 deals that you've looked at that were all not deals. This is the implied work of real estate investing. If you want to buy 100 properties, your chances are you probably have to analyze at least 1,000 properties. And this is also how you avoid burnout. By you analyzing each market and you come up with the scenarios of what terms work, that's how you ultimately figure out whether or not this market is worth your time and also what your buy box is for each market. So you can communicate that to realtors, wholesalers, whatever your way of acquiring deals are. And now you won't burn out anymore. Because next time you see another property for $630,000 that's a multifamily duplex, like the example that we went through today, you're going to say to yourself, hey, that's definitely not a deal. I'm losing $2,000. For me as an investor, that's no way that's a deal. But for someone that's a house hacking, well, maybe it is a deal for you because you're looking at the deal differently from a completely different perspective, especially if you have a job where you want to stay close to your workplace. This is why it's so important for you to evaluate each deal from multiple perspectives. All right. That's it. Hey, have an amazing Sunday, everybody. I hope everybody enjoys Super Bowl Sunday. Spend some good quality time with your family and friends today because that's what life is all about. Have an amazing day, everybody. We'll be back.